that it be written out. So now let's take a look at how we use this custom event in a web application or website. All these standard health monitoring events that come with the .NET framework are automatically fired by the framework. However, when you write a custom event, such as we've done here, you have to explicitly raise it. So we're going to look at two approaches to that. The first is we're going to create an HTTP module that will fire the event, and then we'll also look at how you would explicitly raise the event in a page. So let me add another class to our class library project for our HTTP module, and we're going to call this custom web events. We'll add an import statement for system.web. And then we need to inherit from the page class in System Web UI. And we also need to implement the iHTTP module interface. And the HTTP module interface requires us to implement a minimum of these two methods. First is the dispose method, and in this particular sample we won't implement any dispose functionality, but I'm going to put a little comment here so when you get the sample source code with the video, you know that this is where you would add any dispose functionality. Now let's go down to the init method. And what we want to do in the init method is add two event handlers. So the first handler we're going to add is for the begin request event. And we'll take the context object coming inbound to this method, and we'll add the begin request, or specify the begin request event, and we'll map that to a event called on begin request. And we'll be writing that in just a moment. Now let's take that, and we're going to also add a handler for the end request. And we'll map that to the on end request. Now let's add those two methods that we just mapped our delegates to. So first we'll add on begin request. And we need to have two inbound parameters to this. And the first we'll call sender as an object, and the second will be E as event args. Let's put a try-catch block inside our method. The first thing we want to do is get the event code, or make an event code that represents this event. So we'll create a variable. We'll call it event code as an integer. And we'll set that equal to system.web.management web event codes. Web extend base plus 30. So what this is going to do is just create an error code that's outside of the base range of error codes for the health monitoring system. This will uniquely identify our custom web event that we're firing here. So now let's create an instance of our custom web events, or custom web request event class. So we'll create a variable, we'll call it custom event. And that will be an instance of the custom web request event class we created a few minutes ago. And as you may recall from our constructor, the first thing we want to put is message. So we'll say this custom event start, and the source of the event will pass me, because it's this event handler, and the event code is the event code variable that we just created a few minutes ago up here on line 21. And the next thing we want to do is take that custom event and we need to raise it. Now in case we get an exception, let's do a little something here. Let's dimension a local variable, and we'll call this HTTP app for application as an HTTP application instance, and we're going to set that equal to, we're going to convert the inbound sender object to an HTTP application. Then we'll take that instance of HTTP application and we'll take the context response output and we'll write a line out that says this is the exception information by changing the exception information, or converting it I should say, to a string. So that looks good for our onBeginRequest method, and we want to do the same thing for endRequests, so we're just going to do a quick copy and paste, change a few things. So go up here and change the name to endRequest, and we will go down into the method, go over here, and we'll put, instead of start, we'll put end. And otherwise it'll be the same as the start request method. So that looks good for our HTTP module. Let's compile it, make sure everything works, and it does. So now let's create a sample website to raise this event and take a look at it. So we'll add a new website where we can test out our custom event and the HTTP handler. So we'll add a new website, and let's call this website VB. And again, this will be in the sample code that you'll get with the video. The first thing we're going to do in our sample website is add a reference to our class library. So let's open that up, and in this case we're going to reference the project. Then the next thing we need to do in our sample website is to add some information to our web.config file. So we're going to add two sections to the system.web element of our web.config file. And the first one will be HTTP modules. And then the second one that we're going to add after the HTTP modules will be for health monitoring. So inside HTTP modules, we want to add a new one, and we'll give it the name of Custom Web Events. And then we'll specify the type, which is the fully qualified name of our Custom Web Events class. So that would be HDI.web.management.customWebEvents. And that will do it for our HTTP modules section. That adds our custom HTTP module. Now down into health monitoring. First we're going to add two attributes to the health monitoring element.